let's go back to the talent meeting that they had. Because apparently, Tony had to call a mandatory talent meeting before the TV taping to try to settle all these various warring factions down, whether it's the North or the South or the Yankees and the Rebels or whatever the case it is. And a bunch of Tony spoke, and Tony is not going to yell at anybody or cuss anybody or browbeat anybody. Everybody apparently said that Tony was up-tempo and rah-rah about things that were going on in the company and all the new promotions that he's given so that other people can actually talk to somebody.
Animated is the word we heard used.
Animated was the word we heard. That he's always animated. Good God, if he was any more animated, you'd have to tie him down with goddamn straps. But at the same time, also, apparently, he let everybody know that the legal team, apparently his legal expert, Megan or Mega or whatever her name is, she is technically... Mega. She's technically the number 2 person in the company. The way they've got this, and that scares the shit out of me also for them. And anybody wanting to sign a contract with AEW for a length of time in the best years of your career, understand that the number 2 person in this company is apparently a lawyer that I'm pretty sure had never been to a live wrestling event before 3 years ago and may not even have ever seen one on television, and she's now rated number 2 in the company, according to Uncle Dave's list of the pecking order. So if Tony gets run over by a Greyhound bus tomorrow, she's going to be the one giving out the finishes.
And I could be wrong, but I believe, like Tony, she's not confined to AEW. I believe she's involved with the various different interests of the Khan family and sports and entertainment, so she's not a full-time AEW employee unless they've changed that and I'm wrong.
So they got a part-time number 1 and a part-time number 2.
But they treat it like a full-time job.
Well, yes, they just don't sleep, which always contributes to your creativity. So at the meeting, they said that old number 2 there had sent a threatening email to the WWE, don't tamper with our contracted talent. Because, of course, as overtures have been being made, hey, it's better up here now. We know the old man ran you off, but come on back. So they're putting a stop to that, which may backfire on, the people in the building there, the talent roster, are mostly hostages now because they've all signed to ridiculously long contracts for what they thought was a good deal at the time. But now that they're finding out that Vince is gone and it may be a new day up there, so to speak, maybe they're not so happy, but they ain't going to get to go anywhere because Tony's going to play hardball with those contracts. So, and then also apparently the executive vice presidents stood up and spoke, including the Hardley Boys, and then, of course, everybody's favorite Twinkle Toes, Kenny Olivier. As we mentioned, we got reports that some of the cosplay trampoline cowboys on the roster just loved the tough love and the stern talking to that Harpo gave him in his breathy voice, but the pro wrestlers in the crowd and the people who can see through this twattish bullshit said that it was an epic display of douchebaggery. So I wonder which side was correct.
They were laughing about it. People came out of that meeting laughing about Omega, the things he said, and whatever he was trying to get across. Like you said, I think it probably reached his friends better than it reached anyone he thought it was going to reach. It was laughable, is the way it was put to me.
Preaching to the choir. What did he say? If I was the promoter or the booker, I wouldn't hire 8 out of 10 of you.
8 out of 10.
This is a guy who the only way he got a job to be on television in this country is because the fucking mark with all the money was baffled and blinded by the hypnosis of this Japanese fantasy that they've brought out where everything's better in Tokyo.
And reminder, he didn't pop the rating at all last week for his return, and I know people didn't know he was going to be there.
He popped the balloon of the rating. They had 1 million people till they saw his face was going to be on the show.
But again, they have him speaking there. He hasn't been there on a day-to-day basis in a while because of his injuries, and he's been dealing with the video game, which we still haven't had released yet and had people actually play it. But while all that's going on, CM Punk firmly established himself as the biggest star in that company, biggest ratings draw in that company, everything. He's not speaking. The guys who are trying to reassert the feeling they wanted people to have about them early on, that they really are executive vice presidents, are speaking. Nobody wants to go talk to the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega for advice. The wrestlers who aren't already their friends think they're boobs. They don't want to go talk to them.
The only people that are going to take advice from the Hardleys and Harpo are the people that they're already giving advice to, and that's why those people are shitty wrestlers also, because they're listening to it. As you said, everybody else thinks they're fucking idiots.
Hey, Kenny, I've been in this locker room for a few years. I know we haven't talked, but I really love what you've done with this women's division. Can you give me some advice about how I can make my shit better? Get the fuck out of here.
Or, hey, Hardley boys, can you give us some tips on how not to put over better talent and swerve the people into a completely different angle with somebody else that you'd rather fucking work with instead of what's good for business? But that's, again, you just mentioned Punk had become the ratings draw, the top guy. And regardless of what you think of the talent or lack thereof of Twinkle Toes and the Hardleys and the rest of their ilk, it's not up for debate. It's not in question. The biggest mainstream wrestling star on that roster would be either CM Punk or Chris Jericho. And Punk was fresher, bigger, more recently than Mr. Jericho. But if you're going to have somebody speak, a former WWF champion that is headlined, main evented, pay-per-views, and live events for the biggest company in the business, or these 2 or 3 fucking naive little waifs that get their panties in a bunch when everybody doesn't like their performance art and have never done anything of note anywhere else. They've been, Twinkle Toes was he was on TV. Was he on? No, he's never been on TV in this country.
No, he was on New Japan. On New Japan, he was on.
Well, okay.
On Access, which wasn't rated.
On New Japan on Access. Okay, yes. And I mean, there's fucking hidden kidnap victims you can find easier than that television program. The Bucks had been on Ring of Honor television and Impact.
Generation Me, right? Was that them?
Yeah, Generation Me.
Who knew how true that was?
And they'd been underneath talent. And so to say, and we know what Jericho's mind has melted, but to actually intimate that any of those guys, Moxley even, we know his goddamn brain has been turned to jelly by whatever the fuck has happened to him, concussive effects of blows to the head or substances or whatever the fuck. But if anybody in the world tries to think that Twinkle Toes and the Hardleys are as big a names in wrestling as Jericho or Moxley or Punk, you're out of your fucking mind. And it's just that they can't admit it.
And there's been a lot of structure issues and a lot of behind the scenes issues that we've talked about on the air and a lot we haven't talked about on the air. And I think they do need to do a lot to fix these things, and you got to start now. And I don't agree with some of the people and some of the people that Tony's elevating, but I think it's a start. But the idea that now, all these years later, after everything that's happened in the last year, the original EVPs are going to try to reassert their power and influence over everything is a joke because of everything that's happened. And let's not forget, usually in business, you become an executive vice president, unless someone's going to acquire your company or something and just promote you and elevate you. You become an executive vice president maybe after you've been a senior vice president, which happens usually after you've been a vice president. Maybe before that you were product manager or something. I really don't know. Maybe you started as an assistant. You worked your way up. Usually it's not, hey, I'll make you an executive vice president because I understand you guys want to do whatever Triple H does. And that's the only reason they became executive vice presidents.
Hey, you know what? And here's the thing. Remember, one of the Harley Boys' wives got named as the head of merchandise. I wonder how that's turned out, because she had been mailing out their T-shirts that they sold when they did their own merchandise, which makes me think that, well, my God, then the next time some billionaire starts a fucking wrestling promotion and is on national cable television, I can just have Hotchkiss Featherbottom be the marketing and merchandising manager, because he mails my T-shirts out.
And no one's had more friends hired and elevated than the Bucks. And in a lot of cases, it hasn't been justified. Again, after all this time, Omega's going to try to reassert some kind of influence over there. He's going to be the next executive vice president out the door. And he's going to try to do this.
I don't think he's going to quit, and I don't think they're going to fire him. I think they're going to give him a permanent leave of absence because he's fragile mentally. We know that. And he's going to crack up, and they're going to have to fucking book him a rubber room at the Puzzle Factory. And they'll just say that, okay, if you see Kenny, just tell him he's still an EVP, because he's really forgotten where he lives anyway. And he's on medication.
He's going to be the next one out the door. And especially then, you're going to hear people laughing about this. People are already laughing. If you're not in their camp, or some young wrestler who's just worried and is going to sit there and listen to what anyone says, they're laughing about Kenny Omega's performance. And that's what it was. It was a performance. It was a show. They're laughing about his performance in that meeting. They're not laughing about Tony, even though there's laughable elements to the way he gets animated, but they're laughing about Kenny.
They can tell that Tony genuinely means well. He's just a rich kid with a lot of money and a fantasy of doing what he's doing now.
And a good heart.
And a good heart.
They know he's a nice guy and a good guy, yeah.
And I've said I wouldn't be crucifying him and blistering him if he'd have started the company and let experienced people operate it. But, you know, you get what you get when you do this. Anyway,
and that's
let's talk about this.
And that's why we're in the situation we're in now with AEW. Again, there's drama that everyone knows about. There's drama that people publicly don't know about. We haven't even talked about this Thunder Rosa thing, which is a whole nother story. But all across AEW, what we were told was the friendliest locker room, the happiest locker room, the greatest place to work. It really is an AEW civil war. And there really is a lot of things going on that need to be fixed, and you need leadership. And I hope for the best, but right now I got a real bad feeling about a lot of things there.